The Rams made a huge splash this offseason when they traded up to get the #1 overall pick in the draft, selecting Cal quarterback Jared Goff. That pick is now looking questionable because Goff is currently listed as the third QB on the Rams roster behind starter Case Keenum and backup Sean Mannion. Head coach Jeff Fisher told NFL Network that Goff will be inactive for the season opener against the Niners on Monday night. Goff finished the preseason completing only 22 of 49 passes for 232 yards with 2 touchdowns and 4 turnovers. Stephen A., does Goff being inactive appear that the Rams made a mistake here?
It appears that way, but the jury is still out. We don't want to sit up there and engage in condemnation about this kid who's a true junior coming out of college and being thrusted into this situation. It is a bit odd that he's not on the active roster. The fact that he's not on the active roster, I don't even know the name of the #2 dude that they have in front of him. Mannion. Who the hell is Mannion? So, I didn't know whether it was Mannion or Onion or something. I didn't know. I don't know who the hell it is. I'm not knocking him, but my Lord, I've never heard of him in my life.
It's not Onion. It's not Mannion, not Onion.
Not Onion. So let's get his name right. I mean, this guy is ahead of the #1 overall pick. I'm not going to condemn Jared Goff. I'm going to condemn Jeff Fisher. I'm so surprised. 22 years, entering his 22nd season as an NFL head coach, only has 6 playoff appearances on his resume. We all know that with Les Snead, he's got some say in terms of who they draft. My goodness, if they've missed the boat on this and has blown the #1 overall pick in the draft on Jared Goff, we got a problem. And somebody needs to be looking at Jeff Fisher, because it's one thing for him not to be ready, but for him not to be on the active roster, this is bad.
Well, you and Coach Gruden earlier point out, listen, a true junior and new system, he's not familiar with it. This is a long-term play, not a short-term play. I think it's way too early to make a judgment about Goff, the quarterback, whether they made a mistake taking him #1 instead of someone else. They made a mistake trading up in the draft in the first place. They didn't have the #1 overall pick. The Rams had to trade 2 firsts overall, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds to get the #1 overall pick. That's called invented. You can't invent a great player. They have to actually be there. And this was the kind of draft where you didn't see any great quarterbacks. There was no Cam Newton or Andrew Luck, a guy who was obviously going to be great. It was just a typical year where you might find a quarterback if you looked. And the Rams tried to invent a quarterback by trading all this stuff to trade up to #1 and took the guy that they wanted. It's an indictment of them and the organization that they did that. Not Goff, because he's not ready week 1 to take over.
It's an indictment against them for what they did. But the point is, if you do all of that, you had damn well better be sure that this is the guy. And I mean, for politics, far be it for me to say this, but for politics purposes, you got to keep him on the active roster. I mean, my God, to just not even have him on the active roster, you're telling the world, damn, we don't think he can play, which makes everyone look at you. And Jeff Fisher, I mean, think about, do you have any idea how idiotic you have to be to sit up there and draft a quarterback #1 overall and then turn around and tell the world he ain't even active? You know how bad that is?
Worse than that. It's worse than that, because the same 2 guys, take away Foles, Mannion and Case Keenum, were on the roster when they made the trade up. So it's even worse than that, Stephen A., because they're there going, the 2 guys we have on the roster are so bad, we need to trade 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds to find our quarterback. Then you draft that guy because the other guys are so bad, but they're better than he is right now. So the optics are terrible.
You can talk about I mean, listen, everything about Jeff Fisher seems terrible right now. I mean, the city of Los Angeles really need to look at this brother and just ask themselves, I mean, are we really moving it up? We're happy y'all are back, but did he need to come? I mean, it's a legitimate question right now. 6 playoff appearances entering his 22nd season, and this man still got a job, and then on top of it all, drafted dudes #1 overall, and they ain't even on the active roster.
And Wentz and Prescott are starting.
Listen, I like Les Snead. I mean, but somebody got to explain something.
Guess what, guys?
I'm looking at Fisher.
A little over 2 months after giving Andrew Luck the biggest contract in NFL history, Colts owner Jim Irsay says he's still concerned about the team being able to protect Andrew Luck. So the Eagle game was concerning, and until we prove otherwise, we're going to be tested every play. We protect Andrew, good things are going to happen. Stephen A., do you feel like Irsay's making excuses for his quarterback?
Well, here's why I look at it. When we think about Irsay, I don't think it's excuses. I think it's reality. When you look at him, let's call it let's call it like we see it. Andrew Luck has been on suicide watch, for crying out loud, for the first 3 years of his career. Had a lacerated kidney, had an abdominal strain or tear last year. He missed about 9 games, missed the last 7 games. We know what he's been through and what have you. But when you look at Andrew Luck, let's be clear about something here. 55 games, his last 55 games, he's thrown 55 interceptions, okay? And he's lost 14 of 32 fumbles. That's 69 turnovers in 55 games. So guess what? He could sit up there and you look at it and you can say, hey, the offensive line, you can make any excuse all you want to. I know how Max feels about Andrew Luck. We know, I believe he's a bad boy. I think he was worthy of being the #1 overall pick, but let me be clear. There's no excuses to lean on. Andrew Luck has to get it done. And unlike some people I know, I'm not that convinced that this year is going to be that year.
He's going to win the MVP this year.
Really?
Yep.
Stop.
Say that again?
Up the presses.
Yep.
Slow down.
Andrew Luck is going to be the NFL MVP. He's already performed at MVP levels when he led the league in touchdowns 2 years ago, or have we already forgotten? Remember, Peyton was on pace, got hurt, because that's what happens to old quarterbacks, and Andrew led in total touchdowns with 40 over Peyton Manning's 39, just like Cam led last year with 45 over Tom Brady's 39. The older guys going down, it's the young bucks. I mean, we already may be in the Cam Newton, Andrew Luck era, which is, it was just a matter of time. Irsay is not making excuses here, any more than the weatherman is making excuses for the sun if he says it's going to be cloudy. I mean, the fact of the matter is, as Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen pointed out in a very good article last year, that the Colts have not invested anything in their offensive line. In a salary cap league where everyone gets the draft picks, everyone has the same money.
Drafted Ryan Kelly, first round pick.
Okay, this year, until this year, they had never used anything. The most they've done was a second-round draft pick on an offensive lineman. They were 30th out of 32 teams in what they spent on the offensive line in terms of money. So they're not devoting their resources there. This year, 2 of their top 3 picks were O-linemen. They don't usually come in. It's really more of a skills position than people realize. They don't come in and make an impact off the bat. It takes a season or two. Andrew Luck took over a 2-14 team, went 11-5, 11-5, 11-5, and led the league in touchdowns. And then last year gets hurt. They go 8-8 and miss the playoffs for the first time in his career. 8-8, no playoffs when Andrew Luck is hurt. I know they weren't great when he was in. He wasn't having a great season anyway. He has no offensive line. That's the reason he struggled recently.
Let's also add a running game, because even though we respect the hell out of Frank Gore, he is 32 years of age. He ran for 967 yards last year, but he's not an elusive back. He's somebody, first of all, you can't let people penetrate the backfield because he's not elusive and he can't get around that. So first you got to protect your offensive line. Not only has to protect Andrew Luck,
for the run,
but they've got to block for the run so he can gain momentum while by the time he gets to the line of scrimmage, so he can actually gain some yards. If you don't have a stout running game, and you have a questionable offensive line, then all you have is a situation where you're looking at Andrew Luck to come and save the day, which is why I do not believe he's going to be the league MVP.
Well, I mean, until last year when he got hurt, he did save the day. He went on teams that weren't very good. They were the class of the division. 11 wins every year.
The year before last, because he
3 consecutive years, 11-5, and a playoff berth. 3 consecutive years, and he's the whole offense.
Listen.
Jim Fassel said last year,
okay,
Andrew Luck is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. When he was still in college, other credible people were looking at him saying that guy is going to be the greatest quarterback ever. And what you notice is the closer people get to him, the more high their opinion of him becomes. That also tells me something. When people, the closer they get, real football people going, that guy. I asked Aaron Rodgers before last season started, who do you think takes over from you as the best quarterback in football? He said Andrew Luck.
Well, he could say
turned out to be Cam Newton, but that's going to be the debate from now on.
That means he was wrong, which means he has the potential to be wrong again. Let's also not forget the fact that you have to depend on Grigson, okay, and Pagano getting along and being in concert with one another to give Andrew Luck the weapons that are necessary. We can't ignore that either. So, again, they're on the come up. If their offensive line becomes stout, you've got the potential to be right. But until then, the jury is still out, my brother. We don't know this, not to mention the fact that Andrew Luck has been turnover prone. I just set up this and you gave me a whole bunch of wishful thinking. You know, I keep bringing up Kings of Comedy, Cedric the Entertainer. We wish, as opposed to we hope. We don't know. But in the end, what it comes down to is 69 turnovers in 55 games. And I'm not knocking Andrew Luck. because I believe in him. I'm just not so certain I believe in him as much as you do. Number one, at this juncture. Number two, because of the injuries. And number three, because I don't trust Grigson and Pagano together.
Yeah.
The
Peyton
situation
Manning,
itself. We can't ignore that.
The Colts got rid of Peyton Manning for Andrew Luck. Peyton threw 55 touchdowns one season, followed that up with 39, followed that up with a Super Bowl win, and the Colts made the right decision.
I agree with
That's
that.
how gangster this guy is.
That's not about gangster.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes,
I agree
is.
that they made the right decision, but you're addicted to this word gangster. I don't know if it's the Untouchables, it's Law and Order.
That's right.
I don't know what the hell's going on with you.
Hold on, Brick. I don't play a gangster on TV.
But I don't mention it as much as you do, which is what makes me shocked. But what I'm saying to you is this. You keep bringing that stuff up. I get all of that. Those are arguments that I made in the past. The difference between you and I is that you're bloviating to a point where you think Andrew Luck has already arrived and you're not taking the ancillary parts into consideration.
Okay, well, except
you got to take those things
except that
into
if you go,
consideration.
first, I've been saying like the two blue chip guys of this era, Andrew Luck and Cam Newton, that's the era we're in. It's like Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays. People
Why you
figure
keep
this out
mentioning Andrew Luck and
eventually.
Cam Newton without Russell Wilson?
2 and 14 without him. You add one piece, and 2 and 14 becomes 11 and 5. And in case you thought that was coincidence, it was fluky. He repeats 11 and 5 the next year, and 11 and 5 the next year. And in case you think that was fluky, the year he gets hurt, 8 and 8, no playoffs. So one thing is consistent here. When you have Andrew Luck at quarterback, even without an offensive line, even without a running game, you win 11 games and go to the playoffs.
Yeah, and the bad part about it is I agree with your argument, except for how you're making it, because you're ignoring the key points. You're acting like he just got there and it didn't matter what he was going to, because playing in the AFC South before last season actually did help.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how you leave that out.
I
love how you leave that out.
He's
it was a joke for
too,
years.
But
I don't think anything sneaky about it. He's really athletic.
I'm saying for being such a good pocket passer, the way he can run, people underestimate that.
40 touchdowns led the league.
When we come back.